Hi, everybody. This is Hondo Carpenter, your Las Vegas Raiders beat writer for Sports Illustrated and the host of the Las Vegas Raiders Insider Podcast. Very super excited to be joined by my dear buddy. He is a guy that works for me, but man, he is my friend. I respect him. He's a terrific journalist, having a meteoric rise at Sports Illustrated now, not just as an assistant beat writer for the Raiders, but he's an NFL writer and doing a great job. He is my buddy, the great Zeke Trezevan. Zeke, how you doing, friend?
Doing well, Hondo. How about yourself?
I'm doing really well, and you and I are going to really, in the words of my friend Max Crosby, chop it up. See, you young people are all impacting me, man.
Yes,
And
sir.
by the way, I'll tell you a funny story. Shannon says to me, "Oh, wear your black Sports Illustrated shirt." I'm like, "Fine." And then just before we go to air, she says, "Ha ha, I got you wearing black on the podcast." I'm like, "Come on, it's a Sports Illustrated shirt." But you are a fan. I give you credit, just like Shannon is. Let's get into OTAs. And I think there was a lot to come away with that was very, very important. There was a lot that was put out there that I'm like, this is clearly being written by people who aren't here. And then, but there was this time of year is not for evaluation. It is for installation. This game is played in pads, and even you, as a highly undersized defensive end, understand you can't make decisions without pads. I mean, you can't. What did you take away? We're going to get to the lowlights, but what did you take from the highlights of it?
Highlights is just the energy. The guys, they said it a million times in the interviews that they did, and a lot of times when guys say the word energy, they're just kind of giving you, they're just talking, they're not being serious. But after spending all last season in there and just kind of being in there again now this season, there's a totally different energy. There's a totally different pop. And honestly, the defense is flying around. And I say that keeping in mind that last offseason they were flying around. They're flying around faster this offseason. Now, obviously, like we said, pads still need to go on, but some things translate. And that speed that the defense is showing out there is you can tell that they played together for a decent amount of time.
I'm going to tell you what stood out to me, and I'd love your input on this. So, several years ago, Michigan State had the number one defense in America. They lost one game with several controversial officiating calls at Notre Dame. And they go on and they win every game. They only lost that one game. They go and beat up Stanford in the Rose Bowl, won a national title. I mean, excuse me, won the Rose Bowl title. It was the year before the playoff. So they didn't make the national title game. Had there been a playoff, they would have. And many people thought they would have beat Jameis Winston in Florida State that won it that year. And I remember in camp writing about the defense flying around, dominating. They were the number one defense in America. And I remember myself included, lots of people thinking, "Oh, this offense looks bad." Now, the offense had terrible coaching, but that wasn't on the players. They had good players, terrible coaching. But what stood out to me was everybody panicked because the offense was struggling, and that was bad coaching, but also the defense was that good. And as I was sitting there with you at OTA, I mean, at the mandatory minicamp watching and at OTAs, but at the mandatory minicamp watching, what really stood out to me, Zeke, was first of all, there's really good offensive coaching, unlike at Michigan State, but I think it's the same thing. They're going to be practicing every single day against the best defense in the NFL. Thayer Mumford, a young player, a former seventh rounder, competing every rep against Max Crosby one-on-ones. You're going to have JPJ every rep going against a Christian Wilkins. The thing that really stood out to me as a highlight was this defense is elite, and it's not where the Bears were under Buddy Ryan, and it's not where the Ravens were under Marvin Lewis, where they won a Super Bowl, but it has that feeling it could be that special. Am I overstating it?
Not at all. I mean, you're saying that they could be special. I couldn't have said it better myself, right? You're being respectful in terms of, hey, they still have to go do it. But based off of everything that we've seen, they could be special. I hate to get excited about it, but the eyes don't lie. They're passing the eye test again. They're not in pads. We get it. But at the same time, I mean, yeah, the offense is installing a new offense. That's part of the reason why they're struggling so much. But the other half is, like you said, they're playing such a great defense. And I'll tell you, this defense stifling. That's the word I would use. I mean, they are just absolutely stifling. And it's to the point where you have to ask yourself, you have to tell yourself, there's no way the offense is going to be that bad. It's just the fact that the defense is that good. And listen, I'm excited to see, those guys hit the field. They're gonna do well this year for sure. The defense is that good.
I got to go back because you said something that I don't think we can let just hang. I think we've got to explore. You said the offense is struggling. I take a little bit of an umbrage with that, and only for one reason, and I'd love your opinion. AP said on Thursday, he said, at this point, the defenses are always ahead. You know the offense isn't going to run the ball. You have them installing a new offense. And because they're not running, the defense is just putting their ears back and coming at it every time. Do you stand by the fact that you say struggling? Because my opinion is I don't think they're struggling. I think they're just at two different places. At 53, I would hope that I would write differently and with a perspective on football that's going to be different than yours because you're younger, but it doesn't make me better than you. I think it's different. Which one of us is right?
Yeah, so I think both. I think there are times
Okay.
in life where both sides have a point. Those are sometimes the most difficult conversations to have, generally speaking. But right now, I think it's both. Right, I think the defense is causing some struggles for the offense. But I will say this: although I think it's both, I don't think it's 50-50. I would say that it's more so 60 to 75%. The offense is just installing a new offense.
Okay.
I truly believe that. But again, at the same time, they're definitely struggling a tad bit out there. But like
Mm-hmm.
AP said, right? It's early. It's June, right? They don't even have pads on. They still got weeks of practice, and we're talking about an offense. You got to get the timing down. You got to get the rhythm down. There's so much more that goes into getting an offense on the same page, especially with a new offensive coordinator, a new offensive line coach, new offensive linemen. There's just so many new pieces that the Raiders have to kind of work the kinks out on. That I do think it's about 60 to 75%. They're just more so installing a new offense than they are struggling. But that other 25%, they're definitely
Is
struggling.
legit.
Yeah, it is legit, but it's because the defense is so good. It's not like they're practicing against the one of the worst defenses in the league, right? If they were and they were still looking like this, then they would be struggling. But they're just practicing against one of the best.
I'm going to use your words. 100. Your comments
100.
were 100.
Yes, sir.
So let's go to what I think disappointed me about OTAs. And I'm really mandatory minicamp. Is I got flooded with emails from people, you know, oh, the offense is killing it. I'm hearing the offense from the inside is killing it. That's not true. And I it is totally fair and germane to say I think the defense won it all. It's also fair to say that defense was the number one defense the last 8 games of the year, and they won everything then, so that shouldn't surprise you. Um, but the misinformation, and this is what bothered me a little bit, is you saw fans getting worked up, and I kept trying to be that voice of reason, saying it's installation, not evaluation. And I think sometimes I don't mean this to pat you and I on the back or any of our colleagues, but sometimes you got to listen to people that are there in the building and get perspective. Listen, how many times have I written articles or you with players' thoughts who saw things completely different than us? I just think that's important. And I don't think Raider fans right now should be getting hyped about anything. It should be keeping the tiger in the cage till July 23rd.
Very leveled, right? You got to keep it leveled. And even myself, right? That's why I said a minute ago, I said, I hate to get as excited as I'm getting, right? I'm having to remind myself, hey, relax a little bit. So what I'll say is, I think kind of to your point, I think a lot of people, a lot of fans, they don't truly understand how different it is being inside versus being outside, and how vastly different the information can be from you being at practice every day or being inside inside the locker room every day. So I'll tell you, I get surprised by it sometimes when I see some things from the national media being said, and I'm like, where did that come from? And I'm there every day, right? So if I'm surprised by it, I think that most fans would be surprised just how different the information is when you're there in person.
Totally agree with you 100%. So let's talk about the offense, okay? When the defense knows you're not running the football, I mean, Max Crosby and Christian Wilkins and Tyree, Wilson and Adam Butler and Jenk and Malcolm Kuntz and Janarius Robinson, which nobody's talking about. I don't understand that. I think he has a chance to be a special player, but they've got so many defensive linemen. So when they know you're not running and they can pin their ears back, and oh, by the way, the offensive line can't block
Yeah.
because there's no, they're not being physical. All of a sudden, I don't care who you are at quarterback. You can be Joe Namath, Jim Plunkett, Patrick Mahomes, Aiden O'Connell, Gardner Minshew, or Jesus Christ himself. And you're going to be under pressure and have to throw the ball away sometimes. So when I'm reading, oh, quarterbacks look terrible. Okay. No one was allowed to block. And you got guys who know the situation pinning their ears back. I think it's fair to say they didn't go 10 for 10, but I also think it's unfair to say that without putting the entirety of the situation in perspective.
Yes, yes. You gotta, again, perspective is the right word, right? You got to give those details, right? It's not like they're just out there not playing well, right? They're at a lot of disadvantages right now, right? In terms of, hey, the defense pretty much knows what you're running, or they know you're not running the ball, right? That if you know what a team's going to do or what they can't do, that makes the job significantly easier for you, right? The offense is passing pretty much the entire time. You pretty much know what routes they're running. It all works, or most of it works in the defense's favor. So if you're going to talk about the struggles of the offense, you definitely have to keep some perspective on it. You got to give some additional details for it as well. But I definitely think you got to keep in mind what all the offense is going through, the disadvantages that they have at this point in the season, or in the offseason, I should say.
Now, I'm going to take everybody back to an NFL story. Years ago, I'm covering the Lions, and the Lions got Mike Martz as the offensive coordinator, and their offense was terrible. And so they went out and had a big scrimmage. And the scrimmage was the offense against the defense, but the defense was down like 5 or 6 starters. Rod Marinelli had said, hey, I don't want these guys getting hurt. They're out of the defense. Offense looks unbelievable. And everybody's writing, oh, Lions offense explodes under Mike Martz. Last year's over. I mean, the headlines were hilarious. And I was talking to one of the Lions players who said, yeah, I would hope with all of their starters and 6 of ours on the bench, they did look good. And everybody laughed. Sometimes it's not just what you see, it's the perspective of how you see it.
1000%, 1000%. And to that point, right, and you've experienced this with us at camp and at practice, there's times where we'll kind of look at each other or look at another media member and kind of whisper like, hey, am I seeing the same? Like, are we seeing the same thing? Right. So, and that's how important the perspective is that sometimes even being there every day, we still double check, right? Just to make sure that we're not crazy or we're not seeing something that's not there. So yes, you got to make sure that you're keeping the right perspective, the right eye goggles on, if you will, of the entire situation to get a fair idea of what's going on.
Now, I want to go back to something that you and I experienced during OTAs and at mandatory minicamp. So when Aiden didn't need his offensive line or the best defensive line in the NFL chasing after him when they knew they couldn't be blocked and it was going to be a pass, I was pleasantly surprised with his lateral movement, which I did not see last year, and his accuracy. Now, again, when those guys are coming at you unblocked, knowing what the play is, you got to get the ball away quick. I get that, in his accuracy in that situation was not as great as I'll be frank. I saw much more accurate during the season in live games than I saw in that situation. And that made sense to me. They're not being blocked, whatever. But when you saw him in the fair situation, which was moving laterally and throwing the football, his accuracy, I remember during OTAs in minicamp, we both were like, whoo, he's throwing dimes. Your thoughts on that scenario with AP? I mean,
Yeah.
with Aiden.
Yes, sir. So with Aiden, I think that kind of goes back to the fact, like we all said, like we know, right? Since those guys are not being blocked, yeah, the defensive line, yeah, the defenders might get to the quarterback, but the play still continues because they understand that the offense is at such a disadvantage. So that gives everyone else a chance to see Aiden move around, and he looked great. But this is what I'll say to kind of further that point. That's another thing that I feel like Aiden heard the knock on him. He heard, hey, he wasn't vocal last season. He heard that he was a sitting duck in the backfield. Everything that you said bad about Aiden, again, I think he's upset. I really do. I think he's upset, and I think upset in a good way. I think it's motivating him, and I think he practiced that lateral movement, this offseason. I think he went in the weight room and tried to figure out how to get better at those things. So the accuracy is there. About a week or two ago, I saw Aiden throwing the ball into the net, and when I tell you, it was like watching a great free throw shooter shoot a free throw. It was like he threw it and he could have turned around, and before it even went in the net, you knew it was going in. So when there's a fair situation, when there has been a fair situation, Aiden has looked good this offseason, I got to say.
I agree. All right, so let's go to something else because I don't remember which one of the players it was. If you remember, correct me. It may have been Max, but somebody referenced he's out there talking and he's talking a lot of crap.
Yeah.
That's an edit.
Yeah.
Uh, there was a time I think it was during OTAs, the first one, I don't remember, where you turned to me or I turned to you. I don't remember which one of us asked the other. Was that Aiden out there talking?
Yeah.
He found his voice, didn't
His
he?
voice. Yeah, literally found that's the way to put it. He found his voice last season. He was a rookie thrown into a situation, a crazy situation that I still think people underestimate that most rookies would not have done well in. So at that point, you're the rookie. You can't really come in trying to lead a bunch of grown men, the second highest paid offense in the league. You can't, you're not really in that position at that time. But over the last 8-9 games of the season, over this offseason, he's earned that right to be more vocal. He's been asked to be more vocal, and he's done it. He hasn't hesitated, and he sounds natural when he's doing it. He doesn't sound like somebody that's pretending or that's trying. He doesn't sound like a tryhard. It sounds like this is what he's supposed to be doing. And he sounds good. He looks good. He looks like he's a leader in the making. And he's definitely made strides since last season.
Antonio Pierce is, if you get to know him, he's almost impossible not to like. I just genuinely care about him as a man and as a coach. I think the respect that you have mirrors mine. What surprised you most this offseason with him? Because I had one big thing, and I'll tell you what mine was. He didn't change. And he wasn't the guy that before he got the job. I mean, he's the same guy. Nothing literally changed. What did you notice about him this offseason?
So he definitely didn't change. But one thing I've noticed about AP is that just the feeling that I get, the vibe that I get is that he's much more analytical now. It seems like he took all the information, and this is what made him a great linebacker, right? You got to be able to read things, you got to be able to tell what's going to happen before it happens, etc. I think he's taken the same kind of analytical approach that made him a great linebacker, a Super Bowl winning linebacker, and he's brought that to coaching, much like Aiden last year, right? Neither one of those guys were expecting to be put in the position that they were put in. It was middle of the season. They didn't really have a whole lot of time to think. What I think has happened so far between last season and this season is that AP has had a chance to think. He's had a chance to process, and not process while under fire, not process while he's doing 1,000 interviews, brand new head coach, all that kind of stuff. He's had some downtime to process, and I feel like he's processed everything. I feel like AP has probably processed some things that we couldn't even imagine, right? From how he handles himself to how he answers the questions, whatever it may be. I think he's been processing a lot. That's the vibe that I picked up on.
He said something Thursday that I thought was brilliant by him. Uh, and I'm going to put it in context, then I'll tell you when I'm quoting him. But we always talk about young players learning to let the game slow down. It's important because it has to slow down. The thing that AP said earlier this week was, hey, there are meetings going on right now. I can't be in them all. And I think that the game, it slowed down for him as a player, but I think this offseason it slowed down for him as a coach. Do you think I'm oversimplifying it?
No, but I'll take it a step further. One of the great things that every leader has to learn how to do, kind of to what you just said, is every leader has to learn how to delegate. And I think that's kind of what AP he's done a great job of. But that came with time, that came with him hiring people on his coaching staff that he could trust to delegate things to. So I think that's another thing, is that he's learned how to take some of the stuff off of his plate, trust those around him that he's instilled around him, those coaches. Obviously, you got the veteran players you can trust as well. And he's letting people play to their strengths so he doesn't take so much onto his plate. And I think that has helped the game slow down for him as a coach.
That is terrific analysis. That's great stuff on your part, Zeke. So let's get to him. I mean, let's get to the team. Trey Tucker. Last year, everyone saw the speed, just, but everyone also last year saw the key drops.
Yes.
And I said this on the podcast yesterday. I don't remember seeing him drop a ball this offseason. His routes were super crisp, and his hands were almost like stick 'em. It just seemed like the game slowed down for him, and Trey Tucker was comfortable. I'd like to know if you saw that, and if you did, if that guy is the guy this year with Bowers, Mayer, Jacoby, Devontae, and now Trey with that speed, how good can he be?
The word I would use is the man looked like a machine. The first time I saw him just machine. I mean, my goodness, he's gotten bigger in terms of, and a lot of guys on the team got bigger. Kuntz was another one. In terms of Trey, it looks like he's gotten bigger. His legs look bigger. He looks like he's been in the weight room all off season, but it doesn't look like he lost a lick of speed. Which is his calling card. Crisp in terms of the routes. We can't stress how crisp those routes have been this off season. I mean, my man puts his foot in the ground and it's just, which way do you want to go? So he's looked good. I am excited about Trey. I told you I was going to hold back my excitement, but I've also told you privately how excited I am about Trey Tucker. So I'm going to go ahead and let that excitement go. But in terms of, can he be that guy? I think he can, but I do think in terms of the Raiders offense, I think this is what's going to happen with them, and why Trey Tucker may not be quote unquote that guy is because I think they have so many different options on offense. One of their downfalls last year in the last couple of years was that basically you pretty much knew for the most part where the ball was going to go. At the very least, you knew who they wanted to get the ball to. Right now, between the offensive play calling that they're setting up and the players that they have in skill positions, you can't key in on anybody. So I think if it all works to how Getsy wants it to work, this is going to be spread out relatively evenly. There may not be a guy. Now, don't get me wrong. Devontae Adams is Devontae Adams. Brock is going to be Brock. Those guys are still great in their own. But I think if everybody had it their way, it's going to be spread out so well that you can't key in on anybody. And that's going to help the offense overall.
The thing that, and by the way, you go ahead and be excited. Everybody knows you're a fan, and I don't mind it. I bust Michael France because he's like, oh, I'm not a fan, Hondo. I'm like you. So anytime he says something fan, but you, and I have no issue with it. Go right ahead. Now, I got to get to this last question because we're going to talk about it every day this week on the pod because I think it is a massive issue. Preseason. Now, I am a guy that says you don't want to play any of your surefire stars. It's not worth getting hurt in preseason. I don't want to see Max Crosby and Christian Wilkins touch the field. I assume that we will for one series, maybe. I don't want to see him at all. That said, you got three quarterbacks competing. And I think we're the only ones that are really talking about Anthony Brown. Some others have mentioned him, but we've talked about him from the beginning. You may remember at the NFL owners meeting, had a long conversation with AP about Anthony Brown, who looked very good this mandatory and OTA season. But when you got especially two guys competing for that number one job, and they are going to make it fair because you know as well as I do, the fans don't know if it's fair. The players do. Just like that scrimmage where everyone wrote about, oh, Mike March's offense won. Okay, it was total BS. My point is, players know. And those players have to trust whoever the quarterback is when you line up the ball and kick off at the first game of the season. So how are they going to handle it? Let me give you a couple scenarios, okay? Week one, we go up to Minnesota. And when I say we, going up there. And so what happens if Minnesota says, okay, we're going to play all of our starters one quarter? Okay, do the Raiders play Aiden O'Connell for half a quarter and Gardner Minshew for the other half? Or do they say, okay, Aiden, you get the first quarter against their ones, Minshew, you get the second quarter against their twos. But what happens the next week if they come back to Allegiant against the Cowboys and they say, Minshew, you get the first quarter against the ones, and Aiden, you get the second quarter against the twos, but all of a sudden they don't play their ones in the first quarter. I mean, to me, this is going to be a very delicate situation because whoever wins it, they want them to win it because they want the players to go into that season with confidence. I think we're going to see more play. I don't think in the second half of any games, but we're going to see more play. This is going to be fascinating this preseason, probably more than they ever are. I'd love your opinion.
Yeah, I agree with you. Generally, I would have said, hey, split it in terms of the first quarter, split it with Aiden and then split it with Gardner. But I think honestly, you probably should stick with that and then switch it, week by week, basically, right? So because you want to see what each guy does against the ones, right? An opposing starting defense. You don't want to throw them out there against number twos and they're looking like superstars, and then you hit week one and you're wondering what happened because you picked the wrong guy. So I think what they should do is kind of split it, right? Give Aiden, and honestly, and I'm kind of coming off the top of my head with this, they may want to start Gardner first. In terms of the first game of the preseason, I don't think they will. I think they're going to start with Aiden, but they might want to start Gardner first because you already kind of know to a certain degree what you have in Aiden, right? You already kind of know what he can and cannot do for the most part. I think if you throw Gardner out there, okay, for a half or quarter, get an idea and then switch it. I think that'll be what's best, but you definitely have to get those guys out there and see what you got. You may want to consider just playing one for the entire first quarter of a game, switching that for the next week and go from there. But like you said, it's going to be fascinating. They have to figure it out because they have to build that trust with the team. And they have to see how these guys look against somebody else that's not in the silver and black on the other side.
Rich Scangarello says that he thinks it's going to work itself out really quick. When he said that,
yes, it was
I
like
be-
no, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but definitely when he said that, it was kind of like, what do you? It's kind of like, what do you mean there? You couldn't stop him, you couldn't ask him, but it definitely caught our attention for sure.
Yeah, I think they know
Yeah,
who their guy is,
I think so
and
too.
and I think they're like, okay, yeah, we know who our guy is. Yeah, we're gonna settle
And
it quick.
and
Yeah, okay,
and,
great.
and I think to that point, that's kind of why I feel like they should maybe I think they had their guy. We don't necessarily know who their guy is, but I think to that point, that is why they maybe should start Gardner first, kind of depending on who they think their guy is. So I agree with
All
you.
right. So let me ask you a purely hypothetical question. First game of the season in LA, taking on the Bolts and Jim Harbaugh. Who's the starting quarterback for the Raiders if you had to
Aiden
guess today?
O'Connell, you have to give Aiden a chance to go make up for that his very first career start last year. Listen, that man got no help during his first start against the Chargers last year. He was left out to dry. Give him a chance to go make up for that. Give him the better protection. Go listen, block for him this year. Don't leave him out on the island, and let's see what he can do. Aiden O'Connell. Don't get me started, Hano. Aiden O'Connell.
Oh, I want to throw some gas on that Zeke Trezevan fire. All right. I want to get to one last thing I talked about over the weekend in my podcast. I don't remember if it was Saturday or Sunday. I think it was Sunday, but whatever. You were working for me last year. And going into that game, Jimmy Garoppolo gets hurt. I reported all week that Brian Hoyer is going to be the starter.
I remember
Now,
that.
you know why I reported that and who told me. Because I told you.
Yes.
Not going to repeat it. It's nobody's business. So I land in LA on my airplane and I got a text. It's going to be Aiden. And I'm like, all right. So I tweeted it out there. Now, I believe, Hondo opinion, and you know more details than I can say publicly, that Josh McDaniels changed his mind and went with Aiden O'Connell because he felt the pressure of the fans. And I've already reported that from the moment he got hired, he almost became anxious of, oh my God, am I going to get fired? I believe, Hondo opinion, the reason that he didn't change the playbook, the reason he didn't parse it down, the reason he did nothing to help Aiden was he thought it was early in the season. We're going to make the playoffs with Jimmy or Brian, but let's put the kid out there. Let everybody see he can't do it. So then nobody will complain again. And when I put Brian in, he's going to look great. I totally believe that was the reason. The problem is everybody looked bad under Josh McDaniels because he wouldn't change his system. I believe that's what went in and set him up for failure. I don't believe the Raiders did anything to help him. Now, I've said that all along. You know the background of where I'm coming with that. Do you think that I'm overstating that?
Do I think you're overstating that? Hondo,
How about
I think you're understating that.
okay?
I think you're understating that. That's what I think. I think you're being very nice in terms of that statement is what I think. I think you could probably overstate it some more. I do, to kind of give some more detail about what I mean. I do think what you said about, hey, Josh wanted to throw the rookie out there. Everybody can kind of see, quote unquote, the rookie couldn't do it, quote unquote. That way I can do what I want. I could not. I think that is the case times 1,000,000%. I think there was some pride, there was some ego in there. There was some connection between, Josh and Brian. There was some connection between Josh and Jimmy. I think he's a loyal guy. And I think his loyalty just cost him in between his loyalty and his ego and his pride. I think it kind of impacted that. But you only shifted, you only double teamed Khalil Mack twice the entire game and a rookie quarterback. Like what? How many sacks did he need to get before you double team him? Did he need to go for 10 sacks before you double team him? I mean, what else did you need to see? Then at the end of the game, the rookie is marching down the field to go win the game, and you roll him out of the pocket and throw the ball? Like, nah. There's more to it than just that was a bad play call. So yeah, I digress, Hondo. You're understating it.
Zeke, I'm sitting here as a 53-year-old man, and that has not been something I've been accused of much in my life is understatement. So I appreciate you, my friend. Now listen, happy belated Father's Day. I'm going to say this to everybody. Great writer you are. Better person. You're a tremendous employee, a tremendous writer, great friend. I genuinely love and care for you and your family. And you are a great husband and a terrific dad. And I know you had terrific father. I know you had a terrific grandfather. I know you had so many terrific men in your life like I did that so helped you. But even though it's late, I just got to tell you, belated happy Father's Day. I'm so proud that you're my buddy.
Hey, listen, Hondo, thank you very much. First and foremost, happy Father's Day to you as well. Happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there. They say that Father's Day is one of the least most valued holidays out of the year, right? You got Mother's Day up there. Hell, Valentine's Day is more valued than Father's Day. But what fathers do, a lot of it goes, underappreciated or underappreciated. So to all the fathers out there that never hear, I'm proud of you, or never hear, thank you for the hard work that you put in every day. You're hearing it here. You're hearing it from me. You're hearing it from Hondo. Happy Father's Day to all the fathers. Thank you for the hard work to all the fathers. Keep doing what you're doing to all the fathers out there. Your kids need you. Your family needs you. Don't stop. Keep hustling. Happy Father's Day to you.
All right, tell everybody your handle where they can go follow you on social media.
Yes, sir. EZTREZ _ SI. So EZTREZ _ SI.
Easy like a Sunday morning. All right, good. Now you know why I write and don't sing. Listen, Zeke, appreciate you. Hey, everybody, we are making 10 or more pieces of written content every single day. Nobody covers your Las Vegas Raiders like we do at Sports Illustrated. And the reason we're able to do that is because of a big thing. You guys, you like it, you share it, you subscribe it, you read. It's 100% free because of you guys. Find everything Zeke writes, everything I write, and everything the rest of our team writes when you go to si.com/NFL/Raiders. Follow me on X when you go to @Hondo Carpenter, and on IG when you go to Hondo SR. Zeke, thank you, brother.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
I got to find this thing, my old man in the light. I got it.